Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. MLAs in the Northwest Territories have voted in favour of holding a public inquiry into the 2023 wildfire season. The vote came down just before 4:30 this afternoon Mountain Time. But even though a majority of MLAs think an inquiry is needed, today's vote is non-binding. And the NWT Premier is signalling that if one does happen, it won't be anytime soon.
During the wildfire season is not the time to hold a public inquiry. It would require people to be taken off of fighting fires or providing emergency response to testify, and I don't think that is prudent of us to do that, take people away from their jobs of fighting fires during the fire season.
Those comments from RJ Simpson coming just after today's vote. The CBC's Natalie Prman had a front row seat to all of this today at the Legislative Assembly. She's here to break it all down. So Natalie, what happened today?
Well, Megan, in some ways this was a long way coming. You know, this was first scheduled to happen a couple of weeks ago, but was postponed to today. And that was so that members could hear from their constituents and, ultimately look into their options. And today we saw all of the regular MLAs who were in attendance stand up and vote in favor of a public inquiry. We heard them talk about the need for restoring public trust, the need to understand why the government made the decisions that it did. We heard that in some cases, those who placed their trust in government were the ones who were hurt the most. Here's Shauna Morgan.
There was a social contract that was understood, that if you obey the government's order to leave your home, the government will ensure you're safe. And many people from many different walks of life felt that that contract was broken, and that is a big deal. I personally think it was a miracle that nobody died driving out on those highways, either from being burnt up in their vehicles or from traffic accidents in the crush of thousands and thousands of vehicles, leaving Yellowknife after a late evening announcement of the evacuation, driving often all night through flames and smoke.
Now, we've heard the Premier talk about how a public inquiry would be costly and cumbersome, and so a public inquiry isn't the way to go, he says, for those reasons. And today we heard MLA's response to that, and, they say they're not buying it. Here's Richard Ajaragon.
But what I heard from my friend on the other side of the House, we don't need a public inquiry. It's going to cost millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of people are going to be interviewed, is going to disrupt the whole government. When I hear that kind of stuff, it's just like you're trying to hide the truth from the people. The truth will set you free, they say. Well, this public inquiry will do that.
So what happens now, Natalie?
Well, the Premier says that they're going to continue with the plan they've already made. So that's these two after-action reviews, as they're calling it, with the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs and the other one with the Department of Environment and Climate Change. And so the Premier says that the public will have a chance to have their say in those reviews. And then after that, once those are done, then he says the government will revisit this question of a public inquiry. And I'll just add that I asked the Premier, what does this say about trust in the government to have all of the regular MLAs who were in attendance stand up and vote for a public inquiry? And he told me that, he understands that everything the territory went through over the summer was traumatic and that people have questions that need to be answered. But he says we're living in a time when there's less and less trust in the government. And he says ultimately he wants to hear more from residents through this mechanism of the reviews. And he says that the summer, possibly another big wildfire season, is not the time to have a public inquiry.
All right. Thanks for all your work on this, Natalie.
Thanks.
Wildfires also devastated Alberta last season, and in a way, the season never really ended. There are still fires smoldering right now. The Alberta government is working to get ready, and so are communities. Julia Wong has that story.
Last year, when wildfire threatened Drayton Valley, Lane Naprava jumped into action, helping to build fire guards.
Well, it's all our community too, right? And it's hard to sit back and watch as everything's burning around you.
Now, he's one of dozens of people ready to volunteer in case the province becomes overwhelmed again. among them truck drivers and heavy equipment operators.
When there's a fire in the community, I want to help. The province doesn't have the resources as well, and consequently, everybody needs to pitch in on these things.
We're going to give you an overview of the incident command system.
That means learning emergency workflows and staying safe in the field, so it's seamless under pressure if or when the time comes.
We can't always wish problems away and hope that someone's going to come in to save us. The best solutions come from the ground floor.
A record 2.2 million hectares burned in Alberta last year. Wildfire season, which normally begins March 1st, started several days early. There are 55 active wildfires. Facing warm and dry conditions, Alberta could be in for another grim season.
Well, I think we're going to be more prepared than we were last year for sure.
Alberta's forestry minister says this season, the province will continue using nighttime firefighting helicopters, bring in ATV and fire bans sooner, and try and add 100 more firefighters to the front lines. It will also rely on volunteers, again.
No jurisdiction has the number of firefighters available, trained, ready to go, and employed on an annual basis to fight the worst fire year.
So we're going to give you some of that information today.
Back in Breton, there's a shared goal for those here.
I just want to keep communities safe, honestly.
More of these information sessions will be held in the coming weeks in a province where wildfire season is already underway. Julia Wong, CBC News, Breton, Alberta.
Wildfires weren't the only thing on the agenda for NWT MLAs this week. They also released their 4 priorities. They're meant to guide the new Legislative Assembly through the next 4 years. The priorities are suitable, accessible, and affordable housing, a strong economic foundation, access to health care and addressing the effects of trauma, and safe residents and communities. Shauna Morgan is the chair of the caucus. That means she speaks for MLAs whenever they come together as a group. Here's what she says about how the MLAs chose these priorities.
We tried to be intentional and be clear with ourselves that in setting our priorities, we shouldn't be getting into the weeds of how things should be done. So sometimes we want to skip right to like a specific infrastructure project or a specific technology that we think would be a great idea. But we tried to step back and focus on what is the outcome we're trying to achieve. And then we will really lean on more of the experts in our government and in our communities to help us figure out the how.
Morgan says more details will be fleshed out within the NWT government's mandate. In Nunavut, the winter sitting of the Legislative Assembly kicked off today. Minister of Family Services Margaret Nakashuk recognized the newly appointed ethics officer, Joseph Murdoch-Flowers. Murdoch-Flowers is a practicing lawyer and has experience as Justice of the Peace.
I want to ensure that the public service has confidence that I'm an impartial person in this role, that I'm fair, that I give good reasons for the decisions that I'll be making. Essentially what I want to do is I want to ensure I maintain public confidence in the public service of the government of Nunavut.
Murdoch-Flowers says he's looking forward to his new role. And the Yukon Legislative Assembly will also be back in session 2 weeks from today. In a notice this morning, Speaker Jeremy Harper announced that the 2024 spring sitting will convene at 1 p.m. Yukon time on March 7th. It'll be the first time Yukon politicians are back in the House since the fall sitting ended on November 23rd. $10 a day. That is how much NWT parents will be paying for childcare as of April 1st. That is 2 years ahead of schedule. Jenna Sudds is the Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. She made the announcement in Yellowknife today alongside Caitlin Cleveland, NWT Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Cleveland says families in the NWT could save more than $9,000 a year for each child in licensed care.
For some families, they may make the difference between being able to afford a down payment on a home or being able to save for their children's future. When we support families, we enable children to have the best possible start in life.
The federal and territorial governments plan to create 300 new childcare spaces in the NWT by March 2026 as part of the 5-year, $51 million agreement. The NWT joins 5 other provinces, along with the Yukon and Nunavut, in reaching the $10 a day goal. The federal government aims to have the remaining provinces under the policy by 2026. This week, Canada's Labour Minister heard that the strike by Iqaluit Housing Authority workers is an example of why anti-scab legislation should be passed and implemented as soon as possible. Seamus O'Regan was in Whitehorse to meet with the Yukon's Labour representatives. In November, the federal government introduced a new piece of legislation. C-58 would ban the use of replacement workers during a contract dispute. Yukon Federation of Labour President Teresa Atchison reminded Minister O'Regan that's exactly what happened in Iqaluit last year. She says employees were out on strike for 136 days because workers were being flown up from the south. They were paid more than Iqaluit-based staff, and they were also given benefits and housing, even though they didn't have the skills of the regular staff.
Those local workers speak the language. They can speak the language to the people that are in the housing. And when you bring in southern workers from down south that aren't going to have that connection and that benefit, why wouldn't you recognize that and pay your local workers for what they bring to the job?
Bill C-58 contains a clause that says it will come into force 18 months after it receives royal assent. Atchison says the Iqaluit Housing Authority strike proves that's just too long to wait. The new bill would only apply, though, to federally regulated sectors like banking and telecommunications. The community of Fort Simpson is reeling after an incident at the elementary school last month. Leaders say it harkens back to residential school. Carla Ulrich has been following this story. She joins me now with more. So, Carla, what happened?
Well, Megan, the alleged incident happened on January 22nd. That's when Dylan Kakvui says his partner got a call from the principal of Cleedley-Quay Elementary School asking her to come in. He says the principal, Benjamin Adams, told her his 8-year-old son was backhanded by his teacher. His son has autism and is nonverbal, but Kakvui says his son signaled to his chest and says it hurts, he hit. The teacher was removed from the school for almost a month as an investigation was launched. And then in a letter to all of the parents at the school, the principal acknowledged something happened, but wouldn't say what. That's also when Adams announced the teacher would be returning to school to teach a different class. We asked about the investigation, but the Decho Divisional Education Council superintendent says personnel matters are confidential. The Fort Simpson RCMP also investigated and concluded that, quote, this incident did not meet the threshold for criminal charges.
What is the community saying about this then, Carla?
Well, the return of the teacher did spark anger from the parents. The day the teacher returned, some kept their children home in protest. This isn't the first time a teacher at the school has come under scrutiny. Last year, a parent alleged their child was dragged by a different teacher through the parking lot. Decho First Nations Grand Chief Herb Norwegian says no child should suffer abuse from anyone. He says that Fort Simpson is still reeling from residential school trauma. Take a listen.
That's a pretty serious thing to happen, and especially if this day and age when all of our people, if all the parents are just crawling out of the ashes of these residential schools, and now thinking that there's a sigh of relief, then we send our kids off to school, and the very thing that we were treated with is the same thing that they're being treated with, so it just doesn't seem to end.
Norwegian said he wants the Decho School Board to take the incident seriously. Kakvui says he also wants the teacher held accountable for their actions and for the educational staff to take sensitivity training.
Okay, thank you so much, Carla. That was Carla Ulrich reporting from Fort Smith. A new study found that people in Nunavik die earlier from lung cancer than people in Montreal, even when they get the same treatment. It also found that health services in the region are not well adapted to the needs of Inuit patients. The study is by McGill University and Nunavik health workers. It compared data from 2005 and 2016 in the Quebec Lung Cancer Registry. Minnie Gray is a former executive director of the Nunavik Regional Health Board, and she worked on this research. She says the region needs more health services and a regional hospital that could accommodate visiting specialists. Gray also says a lot of people are reluctant to go for help even when they know they're sick.
Because it involves so many obstacles, having to go south and then having to wait months and, to go to CT scans. And, after a while, people just say, well, I don't want to go anymore. I think it's a part of why lung cancer patients have a very short time.
There may be other factors involved as well. The data shows that the most common type of lung cancer in Nunavik is different than the most common type of lung cancer in Montreal. Researchers have already started a follow-up study. There are allegations of serious caribou meat wastage in the Northwest Territories this week. A worker at the Gaucho Ku mine posted photos of alleged meat wastage on social media Tuesday night. In his post, he said he found this caribou on an ice road near the mine. The post has attracted a lot of attention online. Many people are denouncing the hunters who wasted the caribou meat, including Data Chief Ernest Betsina.
It seems to me that the hunters obviously don't respect our traditional land, and they don't respect the caribou to waste that much caribou. I mean, it really is disturbing.
Meat wastage is illegal under the Northwest Territories Wildlife Act. CBC reached out to the NWT Department of Environment and Climate Change about these pictures. A spokesperson said they opened a new investigation into meat wastage yesterday, but didn't say if that investigation is related to the social media post. A new study on dog sled injuries can improve safety in the sport. That's according to Benjamin Smith, the executive director of Yukon Quest Canada. The study is set to be published in the journal Frontiers in Veterinary Science. Authors looked at data from 2018 to 2020. At that time, the Quest was still a 1,000-mile race that crossed Alaska and the Yukon. Researchers looked at 711 dogs and found that nearly a third were injured. Smith says officials can use the study to make improvements.
It's important because as organizations grow, you need to have quantifiable data. You have to understand where your problems are and where your concerns are before you can resolve them and move forward. As an organization, we have a target of 0 injuries, 0 incidents, and we can't achieve that if we don't know where we are right now. So by taking information that's given to us from credible, reliable sources that absolutely have the data that they need, we are able to take that and use it to drill down and find root causes and find ways of resolving some of these issues that we have with injuries.
Not everyone is optimistic that this study will improve things for the dogs. Advocacy group Animal Justice calls the number of injuries astronomical and says stronger laws are needed to keep sled dogs safe.
When my grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, first arrived in Hollywood, it was a place of dreams. But my grandfather clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Stand away from the stand!
I'm Inu Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles. It's about a war of ideas that tore apart friendships, ended careers, and affected families like mine.
Hollywood Exiles, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Innovatum contest is open. You can read, speak, sing, or do a skit in the dialect of your choice. And you can even use filters like this one. Unanutchuk. Buvraganetuk. This is a seal. It's going to swim.
does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it? All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Bad hair days. We all have them.
Even as scientists.
I think I know my place. It's not making art.
What? This is a whale? That's incredible.
I'm piloting a boat in the fjords of Norway. I love this job.
News you can trust. Delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
International tech experts and advocates are sounding the alarm about deepfakes. These are AI-generated videos, images, and voices that can be mistaken as real. Sam Sampson reports on efforts to get lawmakers to tackle the problem.
This is fake.
Which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
This is also fake.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real.
Deepfakes look real, but they're non-consensual AI-generated material. Now, this open letter from hundreds of experts urges governments globally to take immediate action against deepfakes and those who spread them, suggesting criminal penalties for creators of harmful AI-generated content, such as child pornography, and repercussions for tech companies who don't prevent their tools from being used. Many worry how that fake content could have real implications on elections in more than 50 countries this year, like this fake robocall.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
It sounds like President Joe Biden telling voters to stay home for the New Hampshire primary last month, but it wasn't him.
For the first time, the technology to create very compelling deepfakes is available not just to sophisticated state actors, but to individuals. That's just a warning of what we're about to see, which I think of as a tsunami of disinformation.
In Canada, 8 provinces have intimate image protection laws, meaning victims whose images are shared without their consent can sue for damages in civil court. But only half of those include altered images like deepfakes. Ottawa is actively working on AI laws, but they might not pass until this fall at the earliest.
Responsible government needs to be ready.
This AI governance advocate wants Canada to get ahead of the problem, not react to it.
As easy as it is to make a deepfake, we need to make it as easy as it is to take some time to account for it.
Experts say rely on your critical thinking to spot deepfakes. If a video or an image gets a big reaction out of you, pause, consider what it's telling you, where it might be coming from. Asking questions, they say, is going to be key as AI gets better at distorting reality. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
Nancy Itok is the new interim president of Pauktutit Inuit Women of Canada. She replaces Jerry Sharp, who is stepping down and will not seek re-election. The organization represents Inuit women and girls in Canada. Itok says it's important to serve Inuit, and she's proud to be part of the organization. She says following elders' advice gives people strength when it comes to helping others.
We are given strength from our ancestors, and they have survived, and we can sit here because of them. We have to remember that we have power to get through anything, even if it is hard.
Itok's selection was announced at the Pauktutit annual general meeting in Ottawa last week. Customers at a hair salon in Newfoundland can be forgiven if they feel like they're being a little watched, because they probably are. And they may get scratched too. It's all because the salon has a side hustle, adopting out abandoned cats. Barton Jones tells us more.
The Strand Salon in Gander has a special relationship with the local SPCA shelter. Co-owners Amber Hanlon and Amy Cheeks have been fostering cats for about a year now. Sally is the latest furry addition, making her the salon's 16th foster cat.
Her nickname is Dainty Ankles.
because she's so small. So she's 3 years old. She came from a home that had a lot of other cats. She didn't have the best upbringing. She was super, super shy when we got her, but now she's been laying down in clients' laps. She's very food motivated. She loves a treat and loves to be pet. So she's really playful. She's great.
Sally has made herself at home at the Strand. The customers, well, they don't seem to mind one bit.
I had a client yesterday who is afraid of cats, but she said since she's been coming here and seeing the cats in like an environment where it's kind of like controlled, she feels more comfortable around them now.
Hanlon and Cheeks admit they never expected to foster 16 cats in a single year. But it turns out their partnership with the Gander SPCA really works.
A lot of cats that we had, they had been at the shelter for over 200 days without an adoption, and they come here and they've been here for 6 days and have left. Wow. So, like, we had one cat and she was here for 3 hours and got adopted. It was, in 1 week we had 3 cats adopted.
One of our cats had a problem where she had licked all her fur off. So while she was here, her fur grew back. So I don't know if it's like a salon thing or if it's just like a relaxation thing, but she really felt comfortable here enough to like stop licking all her fur off.
So we'll take all the riffraff. Yeah. We'll take whoever.
Martin Jones, CBC News, Gander.
So -3, maybe the high in Yellowknife tomorrow, but you're still going to want to bundle up. There's actually a winter storm watch in place for communities in the southern NWT tomorrow. Environment Canada says to expect winds gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour and wind chills as low as -40. So that -3 is a little bit of a trick. Things will clear up, but stay cold by Saturday. That is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Closing this case gets you one step closer to you getting back on the squad and keeping you out of prison.
You're not a detective, you're a con artist. You have a driver's license, right?
Of course, I have 9. If you're gonna be a cop, what would you be?
Nothing. My dad raised me to be a cop. That's who I am. Stay here.
You're adorable.
You guys are making this entire station look like a circus.
He's busy trying to solve a murder. What are you doing?
Thanks for having my back.
Look at you.
Is this your girlfriend?
This is not my girlfriend.
She's way too cool to be your girlfriend.
She's not way too cool to be my girlfriend.
Nineteen 40 dalawam 50 saling urak luang kalawak tungan. Kemak tualo lakalawam. Pilaktok talo wama. Wakalaw yalak sumatan sibulak pak pilaktok tawama. Pilakta si malak sumagilak tawalak sumagama.
We've won the costume contest every year.